allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Buffy.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Losi.
Here.
Councilmember Stanfield.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent.
Here.
Mayor Long.
Here. Thank you, Buffy. Tonight we have one proclamation for domestic violence awareness. And we have Katie here to accept this. The City of Fortuna proclamation in recognition of October 2022 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas October is annually recognized as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, whereas while progress continues to be made toward violence prevention, domestic and intimate partner violence remains a serious issue affecting all people, regardless of age, race, ethnicity, sex, gender, socioeconomic status, literacy, sexuality, ability, religion, culture, and immigration status. Whereas domestic and intimate partner violence violates an individual's dignity, security, and humanity with the systematic use of control through physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic abuse. Whereas children exposed to domestic violence can experience long-term consequences, including difficulty at school, substance abuse, behavioral problems in adolescence, and serious adult health problems. Whereas Humboldt Domestic Violence Services, HDVS, has been serving Humboldt County since 1977 to continuously support all those living with or escaping abuse. Whereas all survivors deserve access to culturally responsive prevention programs and services to increase their safety and self-sufficiency. HDVS enlists a diverse array of allies, agencies, and community members in supporting survivors of domestic and intimate partner violence. Whereas only together can we change the health and safety of our community by challenging the societal norms that perpetuate violence. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Fortuna recognizes October 2022 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The City Council celebrates HDVS's upcoming 45 years of effort to improve community safety by breaking the cycle of domestic and intimate partner violence. Signed the 17th day of October in the City of Fortuna.
Hi, 3 minutes of fame. I'm Katie Garrison. I am one of the board members for HDVS, and yes, they've been around for 45 years. Humboldt County is very lucky to have such wonderful advocates and people who are interested in helping those who are disadvantaged in this way. We have a safe haven. We also provide immediate emergency housing for anyone who calls in. And we have a 24-hour, I don't think they like to call it a hotline, but it is 24-hour service where somebody is available to talk to anybody who's having problems with domestic violence. We have an excellent director, Emily Velez. She's a very, very sincere and caring person. And our board is also very caring and very concerned and doing a lot of outreach in the community. So thank you very much for this proclamation.
Thank you, Katie. Our next item is oral comments from the public. If anyone would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda tonight, you can come up to the podium. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Charles Wilson. Genevieve, Steve, and I have been protesting about this corona nonsense at the Humboldt County Courthouse for 2 years, since 2 years ago, August. That's about 120 times, I think. Together, we're 232 years old. We're not dead yet, and we're not going to die soon. We make our own posters which change. We're like cheerleaders. Flags wave, we wave, they wave. Most of them wave back. Initially, we got 15 to 20 people are honking at us. Now that they've had their own experience with the corona, we get 700 to 800 honks. So they're not going along with all the media government nonsense. We protest from 3 to 6 on Fridays. And there's 8 to 25 people join us at different times. We don't publicize it, so they just hear about it from somebody else and come out to wave along with us there. Let's see. The anti-Texas group came out 6 times and gathered for an hour at on the courthouse steps to get their photo taken. We've never gotten a real photo in all that time. We got one fake photo, but that's about it. One person said I couldn't use the logo, My Body, My Choice, because it was theirs, but I didn't think that they had any patent on it, so I didn't agree. The only time we made the media was that one fake photo. Fortunately, we've only had 3 days of mist. We did see a distant rainbow up to the north, which is very nice. Summer sun reflects off the chrome, it gets your eyes. Winter sun ducks behind the old post office, which is nice because, again, it gets your eyes when you look to the south and the west there. And the water tower up, I guess it's 8th Street, looks like a nice spaceship with the lights and everything on it. The power and light poles, you see the shadows going around. They're just like giant sundial. Media and government promote fear and hate. One woman shouted, "I wish I could run you all over." Another threw a rock. Get a job, you hippie, was kind of quaint. I didn't know if I looked like a hippie, but anyway. One drove straight at me and then swerved when he was about 3 feet away. We get 3 to 4 fingers, and Genevieve responds with number one, and they withdraw their finger. They don't read the signs, so they just like to be nasty.
Charles, you're over your time. Can you wrap it up, please?
Okay, just one more sentence here. Abuse doesn't bother us because they are not acting like robots. Nobody reacts the same way to a billboard. Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you for Fortuna. You with common sense. You're different than Eureka because Eureka police have to take the shot. And then why I call it shot because it's not a vaccine. The vaccine prevents you to get the sickness. And then Fortuna, I don't reinforce that with common sense, but that's your personal choice. Now I talk to, you can check on it, is John Campbell, YouTube. He always give you update. And then recently, maybe 2 or 3 days ago, European Union asking the Pfizer people, she said, did you ever experiment the vaccine or whatever the shot is to stop the transmission? She said, no, we didn't, because it's a high risk. We thought, oh my God, what kind of explanation, high risk? But we are not a body. God, our body, temple, our body is a temple of God, so we had to protect us. My point is, so they have the vaccine passport. If it doesn't stop transmission, why are you having the vaccine passport? That's called tyranny. You want to force people to do things. So number one of that, and then recently I just heard that by December, Biden already signed you can check on it, Executive Order 14067, that we are not due without the cash. You're going to have what you call a digital money, so be aware of it. And then also, we'll be aware of electrical grid. That means you don't have electricity. So I advise that people usually have store up your food and also have generator. And those are the things I advise. No, not advise, just kind of think about it. And then the 5th shot is coming. My point is, you have shot work so good, you don't need a booster because we are not all dead yet. And you all know about the adult sudden death syndrome. A lot of young people die because they have heart problem. So, but take care of yourself, vitamin D, and plenty of sleep and all those things like common sense. And then another thing I want to remind you of, because they say Chinese police, I'm from Taiwan. So anyway, is they want a one country, two political system. You cannot do that. Hong Kong didn't have that. They want to kind of tyranny and stop your human right. My point is, Chinese police is coming here to kind of control some Chinese people here. They do have one in New York, and they have one, two actually. One is in the real estate company. Okay, if you want to buy a property, you give all your information to them. So they threaten the family in China. If you don't follow the order, they're going to hurt them. So I even heard somebody, acupuncturist, went back to China because they don't want their family get hurt. This is a tyranny, and we want to protect our personal right. So anyway, I have sing you a song, like "Don't Cry for Me for Argentina." Don't cry for me, Argentina. I kind of follow that. Don't cry for me, America. I do my best to keep you from tyranny and hatred through persistent courage and liberty. Then liberty and your persistence of fighting in a minute. Liberty and life and freedom to pursue happiness will be here forever and ever. I promise you, dear, live and follow natural law, love and freedom for all. Tyranny will fail, love will prevail, if all the patriots united and combined. Hallelujah. Treat people as you want to be treated. That's a basic rule. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Arlene Spires, and I just wanted to announce that the River Life Foundation is having their monthly cleanup this Saturday, and they're meeting at 8:45 in the morning at the Redwood Village Shopping Center in the parking lot near McDonald's, between McDonald's and the Shell station. And if you want more information on this, you can contact Sean Swanson, the founder of the River Life Foundation, at 707-362-9384. Again, that's the River Life Foundation Homeless Camp Cleanup meeting this Saturday at 8:45 near the McDonald's and Shell station parking lots. Thanks.
Thank you, Arlene. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to our consent calendar. We have 13 items on the consent calendar tonight, including city council minutes, all of our department monthly reports for administrative, community development, finance, parks and rec, police, public works, River Lodge, the report of disbursements for the month of September, an authorization for the city manager to continue teleconference public meetings for city council and all city committees, supplemental budget request for cleanup and outreach services with River Life Foundation, award of a bid for the 2022 Vansel Tree Removal Project for Logging, Inc., authorize the city manager to contract with Claire Gibson Law to provide construction legal services. Would anyone like to pull anything?
I'd like to make a comment on G.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Anyone else? All right, Mike.
I just wanted to make a comment and thank the citizens of Fortuna, because if my math is correct, we have lowered our water usage in September by 10% from last year and 20% from the year 2020. So we're doing our part to help out with the drought, and just thank the citizens.
Thank you, Mike. Tammy Kay.
Okay, I have a couple questions on this one. They had a $10,000 budget, and it's only 3.5 months into the year, and the report says that they're just about used their whole budget for this. So do you get invoices that tell what they're billing for and why they've used so much of their budget already?
Yes, so we get a budget from River Life Foundation, and with the line item and stuff of what was done, so he'd go out with a couple people to, like, look for the homeless camps. And then when he does these cleanups and stuff, he organizes where the people come out, but it's been tough for him at times, I believe, to get volunteers, even though he has people like calling out for it and stuff. And I think that's may be something with trying to draw people in to help clean up and stuff. That's just my take. I haven't talked to him.
Okay, so can we do something like, instead of using the whole budget in the first 3 months, can you say you've got a certain amount each month? Because if he uses the whole budget in just that short amount of time, then there's nothing left for the rest of the year.
Correct. He's aware of that too. So the 10,000 was, this year we planned on having extra funding from, is it Clean California, I believe? So we anticipated there was going to be another grant money coming in to offset. And that's why we went from 12,000 down to 10,000. And so we're still waiting back from Caltrans to get the Clean California. So yes, there was a little bit, probably more volunteers coming out and help. They were a lot bigger areas that needed cleanup down on Strong's Creek, down by the plaza and stuff, by the creeks. And so I think it's just how, just paying for the help.
And then one of the things we'll be able to do, Mayor Pro Tem Trent, is next year, you know, if we want to try to meter out the services and spread them out throughout the year, it's a little bit late this year because they've incurred most of the expense, but next year we could put perhaps a monthly allowance. But there was a lot of activity, you know, at the end of the summer, you know, from the beginning of the fiscal year. And so there was a number of things that he was contacting me for that, you know, really increased his time out there. And so that's something we could look at in next year's contract, but at this point, it's a little bit late because he did incur those costs already.
And he has also gets called out, not just on these cleanups, but like during a particular week. So there's one person that got taken to jail just recently. And so I know he was wanting to clean up that feller's camp down here in town, just off by PL and stuff. And so that's just going to be a day separate from his normal cleanup days.
I understand that this is really needed, but we have to stick to a budget too. We make the budget at the beginning of the year, and the Measure E committee approved $10,000. In the past, it's the most it's ever been is $12,000, and now they're asking for an additional $5,000. So will that additional $5,000 only last another 2 months, and then we're done for the year, and then come back asking for more? Or can we have that spread out through the rest of the year?
So one of the things, we can ask him to spread that effort out, but one of the things River Life does, they operate, you know, with or without city funding. So before the city contributed funding to River Life, they already volunteered and did these cleanups without any city funding. So my expectation is that they would continue to do these cleanups around even without city funding. But it's certainly something that we can talk to Sean about, is, you know, trying to make his time and spread it out, because I think what you're getting at is you'd like to avoid the situation where a lot of work gets done in a few months and then nothing for the rest of the year. You know, I think two things. One, again, he'll, you know, he provides that effort throughout the year, even if he doesn't have more city funding, but we can also ask him to try to, you know, put a target of hours for each month and spread them out. But this year, it's a little late to change a contract. We could do it with the, you know, if the council authorizes the additional funds, we could specify that, you know, for the remainder of the year, we could ask him to spread that out. So
I just have a concern with things coming back after the budget's been approved, asking for more, especially when we're going into this year where our income is going down and we could be going into recession, and I don't want to keep taking money out of reserves to pay for things after the budget's already been done. And then my last question is, did the Measure E committee see this first, or?
you know, so I put together a recommendation that ultimately the Measure E committee approved mostly. There might have been a few changes, but they've supported the River Life work in the past. And this year we reduced the amount, and the Measure E committee submitted that. They included that with their recommendation. And so they have consistently supported this effort. It's, you know, I also talked to our chief. He couldn't be here tonight, but he thinks there's a great value in Bob Knapp might be able to speak to that a little bit more, but, you know, if we were to have to go out and have our police, you know, post, you know, some of the no camping or the cleanup areas, and then have our general services staff do some of the cleanup, you know, it's a good value to the city for the money, but no, we haven't specifically asked for an authorization of more than 10,000 from the Measure E committee, but they have traditionally supported that in the past. And, you know, I know Aaron's here too, but in the last year, we had a $12,000 budget, which we increased up to 15, and I think the prior year we had 13,800. So we reduced it in anticipation of some of his effort being covered under a Clean California grant, which didn't happen. So it'd be my hope to see at least, you know, 2,500 to 3,500 added to this if the council's not comfortable with the full 5,000. But unfortunately, it's a big need in the community, and it's one of the things that I think really helps Fortuna stand out is that we try to get a handle and, you know,
And I'm
keep
not
the areas
arguing
clean.
that fact at all. It is something that's very needed. It's the only part that I'm questioning is, you know, we have quite a few different budget things coming back asking for more. And I think we need to do something to try to keep us on budget when something's approved. That's it. And that's why I was concerned about this one, because the whole year's budget's used up in 3 months.
Right.
So that, you know, that was my concern,
And-
is trying to stay more on budget with all of our departments and all of our stuff.
And staff's thought was to put that back to what the regular level is, and yes, it would entail using reserves, but, you know, we think it's an important effort to continue to support.
Okay, that was all my questions. Thank you.
Is it coming out of reserves or Measure E?
Well, whatever's not allocated for Measure E is part of general fund reserves. Let's see.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a transfer to the general fund. It doesn't sit in a separate fund, so it would be coming out of general fund reserves.
And then I had a question
Go
also.
ahead.
I know Sean and River Life, they do an excellent job with cleanup, and they really take care of the creek frontages, river frontages. But in the agreement, it says the billable rate for River Life employees shall not exceed $50 per hour. With regard to the amount of time, do they submit a timesheet, and are we paying Sean $50 an hour?
Yeah, so they do bill out at $50 an hour, and they'll give us an itemized breakdown. A lot of times it'll be an email. It's not a, you know, I wouldn't call it a formal invoice. Sometimes he'll submit invoices, but yes, he'll bill his time, and he gives us a breakdown of how many hours and which task, and then our general services superintendent keeps track of what he's doing, and we'll go out and look and understand that, yes, this work is happening. So, you know, that's our check.
So with regard to the amount of hours he's turning in, with the amount that we're paying him $50 an hour.
Yes.
Are we also paying the people that he hires to do that $50 an hour?
Occasionally have one employee that will help him. Sometimes he needs a second person to go out. We did have a billing issue this week where, you know, that we do have a correction, but he should only be charging for River Life employees, not volunteers, not other people that are coming out. So, and I think it's just him, and occasionally he'll have one other employee.
I don't know, $50 an hour seems like an awful lot of money to me, but
Not when you have to pay insurance and the other overhead that you have to.
I suppose,
Okay, I
you're
It's so
self-employed.
expensive, yeah, so expensive.
Is that $50 an hour probably includes the truck and the trailer
That's right.
and a quad?
It includes, yeah, it's just for his time. And again, this is an effort that River Life Foundation was making with no support from the city. So it's not like this didn't exist and the city agreed to fund it. It's really a contribution that the city decided to make and support, you know, and it's already been underway. So, you know, I don't think even without city funding, Sean's going to stop, you know, pursuing those river cleanups. But this is a contribution really to incentivize and keep him more active on that front. But I don't think it's intended to capture all of his efforts for all of the year.
And he's done a good job. I mean, it's definitely helped in Fortuna. I don't have a problem with any of that or the work that he does or anything. I just don't want to have to things keep coming back and needing a budget adjustment.
Well, understood, and we'll make sure to have that conversation with him.
Anything else? Any other items? All right, seeing none.
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 13 items on the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to city council business. We have a public hearing to receive public comment concerning unmet transit needs.
That's going to be me.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So every year, we hold this public hearing to hear from the public as far as if our transit service is not meeting any needs and whether or not those needs are reasonable to meet. So basically, we receive funding it's Transportation Development Act funding, and that gets allocated to cities based on population. And before they can release a portion of that funding, each transit entity has to hold a public hearing for unmet transit needs to kind of hold those transit systems accountable for providing the proper service to their communities. So the city of Fortuna operates Fortuna Transit, which is a dial-a-ride service for citizens that are 50 and over and or persons with a disability. And then we also utilize Humboldt Transit Authority's Redwood Transit System, which is considered a fixed route service. Ours is you call in and we pick you up at your wherever you might be located and take you to your destination within city limits. But the Redwood Transit System operates at bus stops with a set schedule. So that's the difference between the two. And so we contract with Redwood Transit Service to operate their fixed route service here in the city limits. And so basically, those funds cannot be allocated by HCOG. That's our Humboldt County Association of Governments. They take that TDA funding and allocate that based on population, assuming that everyone is doing their unmet transit needs public hearing. And then any of those comments that are received through the public hearing go to the SSTAC. That's through HCOG. It's a committee. It's the Social Services Technical Advisory Committee. They review all of these transit comments and they determine whether or not they're reasonable to meet or not. And so basically going into our financial impact part of my staff report, our LTF apportionment is $447,970 to the city of Fortuna. And $212,000 of that roughly is allocated to our transit system, and a portion of that does again go to Humboldt Transit Authority (HTA) to operate their service. And there's some other minor things. A little bit goes to bus shelter maintenance and 2% set aside for bike and pedestrian projects. But we have $222,000 left over in Fund 260 and Fund 265 for non-transit activities, which is budgeted to fund capital improvements in streets projects. And so that's the amount of funding that we're not able to expend until we've held this process. So tonight we're just opening up the floor and the microphone. All we need to do tonight is take any comments that the public does have and pass those on to HCOG. We do have Stevie Luther with us via Zoom from HCOG. So Stevie, if you're there, if you wanted to say anything, go ahead and raise your hand. Other than that, I'm happy to open up a public hearing or answer any questions before we do so.
Not hearing anything from Steve. Does anyone from the council have any questions?
Hi,
Great.
I had this is Charles Wilson. We got the 2030 plan. We got the 2035 plan.
Mm-hmm.
Climate change is everywhere. Media, the government has bought the whole idea. We have Caltrans. Caltrans, if you want to walk, Caltrans has this policy ever since that bicyclist back about 20 years ago of posting pedestrian prohibited signs on all the state highways. Now, in Humboldt County, the cities are like a string of pearls. The only connection between all the cities is by the state highway. But Caltrans likes to limit their liability by posting pedestrian prohibited signs. You go down to Rio Dell, they got the bridge down there. They put a pedestrian crossing on it. Now they got the sign saying pedestrians prohibited. So presumably, you're violating the law. Now, 35 years ago, I checked on it, it was an $86 fine. And now the thing is, Caltrans is violating the Sacramento Caltrans policy. They're violating the federal funding policy. They're violating the state streets and highways code. So there's all kinds of things saying they're supposed to provide a safe alternative route for pedestrians. Now, if we're going to get rid of the cars, which is their idea, who knows how far that'll get, but their idea is that if you get rid of all the cars, you got buses, maybe. A lot of people can't go on buses, but you can walk. I used to walk to school 4 miles a day, there and back. Didn't bother me any. You take McKinneyville or even Fortuna here. The thing is, the kids go sit. I see them out there in the playground. They stand around with their telephone on there. They don't get any exercise. I used to think, physical education in the school system. I call it sports appreciation. You learn how to count and score because you watch TV. They don't allow you to go play. I was never allowed to play football or baseball or anything because I was the smallest, third smallest in my class of 300. So the thing is, there's a lot of things that need to be done to help out people that want to walk and get around this nonsense that they're going to push. Thank you.
Understood. Does anyone have any comments as it pertains to the City of Fortuna Transit or even the fixed route service that we operate here in Fortuna?
Anyone else have any comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and it doesn't look like we have any specific transit comments to forward on. So
And people can have other opportunities. They can even email the HCOG board if they don't want to come to a council meeting or a public hearing. So there are other ways to get your point across for unmet transit needs without having to come to a city council meeting. So I encourage people to go onto HCOG's website if they would like to do so.
How is the public notified about this meeting, or about that they can put in something for unmet transit needs?
HCOG does the advertisement for that, so they put it in the North Coast Journal, and they do disseminate flyers. There's actually a flyer outside in City Hall, and I have in the past actually put that flyer up around town and on our Fortuna Parks and Rec Facebook page, but I did not do that this year, so perhaps it didn't get as much exposure, but HCOG does most of the advertising for all of the public hearings.
Thank you.
Yep.
And does our person on Zoom have any comments? Are they still there?
Yeah, hi, this is Stevie Luther. I do not have anything to add. Thank you very much, Cameron, for presenting the item.
All right, thank you, guys. Moving on to our next item. Project update and award of a professional services contract for Newburgh Park expansion project.
Thank you, Mayor Long. I'll be providing a brief PowerPoint for this item, and I'd like to share my screen here if I can. Okay, so what we have in front of you is a staff report. I wanted to provide a brief update on the Newburgh Park conceptual plan. And then the staff recommendation is to authorize the city manager to award a professional services contract for the park expansion design to Ontiveros and Associates for a total contract amount not to exceed, $92,500. So just a little bit in the way of background, the city recently purchased 8 acres adjacent to Newburgh Park in early 2022. And previously, staff worked to develop a master plan for the entire site. And with one of the main focuses being soccer fields, trails, skate park, playground, parking, bathroom, and snack shack. And one of the things that we didn't consider was that the bike park would get updated into a really nice pump track that is used. And so that was eliminated, not in the original concept, and one of the reasons why we did an update. But we submitted 2 unsuccessful grant applications. It was a huge effort, and I think the cost was about $7 million to do the entire park upgrade and purchase. And then the concept was ultimately staff wants to design the project and complete it in phases. In the absence of a larger grant, we need to be able to pick away at it. But one of the important things is if you just do one piece at a time, you need to make sure that the drainage and grading and everything fits together. So that's why it's important to do a design for the whole project now and then identify those phases so they can be built later without having conflicts with the future phases. So that's why we want to undertake design. And when I say for the whole park, I'm talking about primarily the expansion area and the area that it interfaces with the existing park. So it's not everything, it's mostly everything to the southerly side. The topographic survey is complete, and this contract would be completed under one of the on-call contract that we have with Onaveros and Associates. One of the near-term things that we'd like to really focus on, the primary goal is to be able to get the soccer fields in. There's a huge demand for soccer, both for youth and the competition, competitive leagues, but you can't build the soccer fields without grading and drainage. So grading and drainage, putting the fields in, have adequate drainage in them so we don't have a field that's wet in the wintertime, and then connecting the park with the trails and the common areas, and then the parking lot. You know, one of the things we're not real excited about is the parking lot, but it's one of the things you need. If you look at the Newburgh Park, when there are soccer on the weekends, it's packed and there's a huge need for parking, but parking lots are very expensive. So as much as we like to focus and just build a field, we also have to build a parking lot with that. So there's, you know, the good thing is there's money that's been rolled over from the last couple of years and money that the Measure E committee allocated for this project. There's $500,000 budgeted for the expansion in 2022 and 23 at the current year budget. There's also $215,000 that's allocated for park acquisition and improvement. So those funds can be drawn upon to do that work this fiscal year. And again, the design fee for this phase of the project we're requesting authorization for is $92,500. So just real briefly, I wanted to share with you, this was the original concept, and it didn't include the bike park. And you can see the soccer fields were aligned, you know, more horizontally, at least as this page is, and so we could fit a regulation field within the park. One of the problems is the bike park's right here in the middle, and so we had to go back to the drawing board and make sure that we could fit. We wanted to have at least 2 regulation fields and then 1 smaller field that would accommodate the U15. And one of the good thing about the larger field size also is you can set them up for the younger ages, and you can have multiple fields on one soccer field with those larger fields. So here's what the updated concept is. You'll notice that the fields, the regulation soccer fields have been oriented 90 degrees from where they were before. You can see at the bottom of the page, it's just off it, but Ronerville Road runs along the bottom of the page, and then Newburgh Road runs along the left side. So you can see the existing parking lot entrance. You know, in the center of the screen, you can see the existing bike park. So that was a key piece because that's become such a popular amenity to leave that in here. And then instead of the skate park being at the, you know, down along Ronerville Road, it would be just north of the existing bike park. And then there's good access, you know, from that parking lot to the bike park, to the skate park. There's a central kind of common area where there would be a snack shack and a restroom. We're looking at some prefabricated structures so utilities could be done. You know, the utilities would be included in the civil design plan, but then we'd spec out package snack shack and bathrooms. It's a lot easier to construct, and you can save a lot of money with those as well. And then future uses of that common area in the middle could be identified in the future. It's quite a bit of space that could be used for other things. And then you could see the smaller soccer field, which would be suitable size for U15, would be located in the upper end of, I think you call it the meadow right now, or
Back 40.
the back 40, thanks. Yeah.
Even though it's not 40 acres.
The other aspect is you see these trails would connect all the way through the center of Newburgh Park, and there'd be ability to walk on some of the new trails. They're located, you know, kind of in brown, and you can see there's a couple of discrete connections to the the Eel River Valley Community Center Foundation. So we've talked with them, and we've talked about those access points, and those access points would be formalized. So if there was, you know, the public could walk around the fields and have the ability to tie to the McLean campus or ERV Foundation trails as well. So, and then again, the parking lot is a central feature and really required. Again, a lot of spectators and participants come to these events, and they want to be able to park. There'd also be sidewalk along Ronerville Road, and new driveway entrances. One of the things we're looking at to see if we can use some of our program income CDBG money to make the sidewalk connections and fill those sidewalk gaps between Center Star Way and along the fringe of the park to deflect some of the cost of the Measure E money that's allocated. But this project's gonna cost in excess of what we have available. So really our hope is to be able to focus, you know, right now there's a drainage ditch that runs all the way through the middle of this park here and daylights over and goes underneath where the snack shack area is proposed over to Strong's Creek. And so it's really important for us to be able to fill that in, you know, to update the pipes, to have new pipes in there. The one that's in there is old and a corrugated metal pipe, I believe. So the grading, the drainage, and then we could start soccer fields, parking lots, trails, and we'll see how far we can get with the money that we have this year. But, you know, it all starts with having that civil site design.
Thank you, Merritt. Any questions for Merritt?
Just curious, how many parking spots is in that new parking lot?
I can't remember that off the top of my head.
says in here
I could
130
probably, I
right?
could go back to that and I could count them,
I
but
think I saw 136.
I think that's the number that.
Yeah, it's in here
it may
somewhere,
be in the
this one.
staff report, yeah.
Now, the baseball fields in the one, the newest design concept,
Yeah.
those fields currently are used for soccer as well.
Correct. Yeah, most of the park is used for soccer. Especially on Saturdays.
And I see to the north side on Newburgh Park that you have proposed sports courts over there.
Yeah, and so really what those areas, that's part of our future plan. It wouldn't be in the civil design, but you can see there's an expansion of it says new parking. And then we have some pickleball courts that are identified as well as a new basketball court. But right now, our needs for basketball, we feel are gonna be served at Roner Park. But in the future, this is a phase that we'd like to come in and be able to work on later. But right now, we're focusing on the soccer fields over to the right-hand side, the two regulation soccer fields, the parking lot, the common area in between the existing bike park and then the smaller field. So we're not really gonna be doing much work over on that Newburgh Road side as a part of this. That would not include the design at this point because it's separate and not really connected.
Because it's part of the older part of the.
Right, the grading and drainage wouldn't affect that.
And I think
that
it's
side.
going to be important to see with the improvements at the basketball court in Roner Park to see just how much usage they get before we start talking about putting basketball courts in at Newburgh.
Right, yeah, this would be considered more of a master plan, like the ultimate goal for Newburgh Park. And of course, we don't have all of the funding to be able to do everything that you see on this conceptual design, but eventually at some point, we'd like to have all of these features and amenities at the park as funding becomes available.
And Mary, you mentioned something, the total cost, somewhere around $7.3 million?
We had applied for grants and that was really, you know, I don't think there's a way the city's gonna be able to come up with that funding independently. So our hope is if we can get the grading and drainage done and build the soccer fields and have some level of parking there, that's what we really wanna try to achieve, having that new amenity. We don't wanna build a parking lot and just have some gravel trails. So really our effort is gonna be trying to push as hard as we can with the funds that we have to get those soccer fields in.
Where did that estimate come from?
That came from a grant that we applied for. We actually applied twice for the statewide park program grant. It's a Prop 68 grant, and we were not awarded either of those in 2 rounds. So that total project cost, that $7.2 million, would be to basically complete all of these features in that park. And the majority of that would be the skate park. The skate park, if I recall, was about 1.2 or 1.5 million of that 7.2. So that's a little bit larger scale project that we're kind of relying on the Humboldt Skate Park Collective and future funding to be able to do some of these other projects in phases. But right now, we mostly want to focus on that new acreage and make it accessible to the public as soon as possible.
I understand that. Thank you. But where did that 7.2 million come from?
There was a detailed estimate that included the entire park, and it had more than this concept, you know, a lot of paved and concrete trails around the park. So we produced that working with a consultant.
did?
Yes.
The city of Fortuna did. We
Yeah.
didn't have Ontiveros or anybody else.
We worked
come
with
in.
Greenway Partners to develop the grant. application and cost estimate.
That was part of that first conceptual design that Merritt showed you that had more amenities than this does as far as some of the ADA walking trails that he referred to. So a much larger scale project. The cap for that grant was 8.5 million. So we figured why not go for doing a lot more if we could. And as Merritt stated, it did include some other projects within the existing park, grading some of the other areas that were really wet in the wintertime and crowning some of the fields. So it really involved a lot, which is why that cost was so high.
Well, and we didn't get that grant that went north to Arcata, so.
In
maybe
Eureka.
this- In Eureka, maybe this next,
Yeah,
go
keep
around.
trying. Yeah.
But this will allow us to apply for smaller grants, and we can try to do this in pieces, and as funding becomes available, and, you know, the alternative is just keep waiting for a larger project, or try to, you know, establish costs for the various aspects, fund some of them with city funds, and then pursue smaller grants for the other pieces.
I would say also that soccer fields are badly needed, the more parking is badly needed. And my microphone needs to be turned on badly. But I've even heard from people about the pickleball.
Yes.
And an outdoor pickleball court would go over well, so.
Or 2 or 3 or 4.
Well, I'm just looking, it looks like you might be able to get 2 in there.
In that design, those are actually tennis courts, but tennis courts can be lined for pickleball. You can essentially fit at least 2 pickleball courts
Right.
onto one tennis court. So we try to get multi-use out of those courts.
Yeah,
the
so
plan.
this will be a good thing if we can get it in, so, thank you.
Something to look into with adding extra soccer fields too is possibility of having out-of-town soccer tournaments. Because that can bring money into the city of Fortuna and maybe help fund more park projects.
Absolutely. That is one of the things we're considering. That's why it was important for us to have regulation fields.
Anyone from the public have any comments on this item?
I was wondering, somebody asked me, are we
You need to
having a
come.
swimming pool?
Could you go to the
I was wondering, somebody say, is there a swimming pool on the going or something?
There's going to be a report on that later on the.
Oh,
agenda.
okay, thank you, yeah.
All right, do we have a motion? I'm going to close the public comment since no one is coming up to the microphone.
I'll move to authorize the city manager to award a professional services contract for the Newburgh Park expansion project for a total contract value not to exceed $92,500.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You guys aren't responding very quickly tonight.
I know, I'm sitting here waiting, come on, guys, come on, she wants out by 7:30.
All right, our next item is to discuss and consider authorizing the city attorney to develop revised nuisance abatement regulations.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. This will be fairly brief. I've identified some improvements to our nuisance abatement regulations that I think are worth pursuing to make the city's code compliance program more in line with best practices. I don't believe our nuisance abatement ordinance has been amended in a substantive manner since the 90s. And so what I'm proposing is to redefine public nuisance more in line with what most cities in California are doing, which is to define a nuisance as anything that violates health and safety laws or the municipal code, which would include by incorporation our building codes. I would also propose summary abatement procedures, which in certain circumstances to protect health and safety allows the city to abate first and notice second, as opposed to the normal administrative abatement process, which is a couple of notices and some reasonable time to comply before the city is allowed to enter and abate itself. And so summary abatement is used sparingly, but it is a tool that in the appropriate circumstance is worth having, and we don't currently have that. I'd update our cost recovery mechanism to be more in line with what the government code currently allows in terms of both special assessments and liens. We'd obviously want to pursue special assessments as opposed to liens, but having both would be to our benefit. I'd also want to include provisions for the recovery of attorney's fees that are incurred in litigation over nuisance abatement. And just better incorporation with our administrative citation ordinance. And so I think those changes, along with some other tweaks that we can make, would put the code compliance program in a better spot to deal with the various circumstances that staff sees from time to time. In the fiscal impact, I indicated it'd be about $1,800 in legal fees. I don't think it'll be that much at the end of the day. But what I would propose is work with city staff to develop the ordinance and bring it back for a first reading or discussion at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so basically our conversation tonight is to okay the extra legal fees, and you will go and work on it. We don't need to discuss what we already have tonight because it's not good, and we don't want to go there. So
And Sue wants
basically,
out early.
Correct.
well,
And
there's no
this,
point discussing what we have. He's going to fix it. So that's really our
correct.
decision is to okay the legal fees and tell you to go ahead.
Correct. And it's within budget
Okay.
of the legal fees already.
All right. Any questions from council? Any comments from the public on this item?
My name is Charles Wilson. Again, we have this 2030 nonsense and the 2035 nonsense. We have Netherlands already suffering, the farmers in the Netherlands are already suffering from all these climate change nonsense things there. The last declared war, that's 1941 or so. The thing is, a lot of people didn't have food.
Charles? That doesn't have anything to do with our,
Well, it's partly on the
agenda.
abatement there. My question is, that, or no, my point is that the abatement regulations should be tailored so that if there is a famine or something like that, we used to have a little plastic thing to get meat. If there is something like that, there should be some way in the abatement process so that you could be temporarily, hopefully temporarily, stopped or some way around it so that you didn't have to go through your abatement processes when people grow chickens in their backyard. Anyway, that was it.
anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment.
I make a motion, we authorize the city attorney to develop revised nuisance abatement regulations for the council's further consideration.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now you have more work. Our next item is consideration of the full delegation of the City of Fortuna's 2019 allocation of the permanent local housing allocation funds to the City of Arcata and approval of the PLHA delegation contract agreement.
So I'll be providing the staff report. So the California legislature approved SB 2, known as the Building Homes and Job Act, that established a $75 recording fee on real estate documents to increase the supply of affordable housing. The act established a permanent local housing allocation program, PLHA, that's administered by State Housing and Community Development to provide a permanent source of funding to cities and counties to increase the supply of affordable housings. These funds are allocated based on a formula and competitive grants to entitlement and non-entitlement jurisdictions. On August 17th, the California Department of Housing and Community Development announced the permanent local housing, the PLHA program for 2022, and issued a notice of funding availability. The program runs on a 5-year cycle and will be continuing into the future with the same source of funding for eligible activities. And so the program guidelines state that an applicant is only eligible to apply for their current past 2 allocations at one time, meaning that the current application period for 2019 will be the last opportunity for the city to apply for those funds. And any funds that are not applied for that go unclaimed will be reverted to the Housing Rehabilitation Loan Fund for the multifamily housing program. So we wanted to, it was important for staff. Actually, the city of Arcata inquired, and staff would like to see those funds remain in Humboldt County. So one of our options is that we can subgrant to another jurisdiction. We inquired with the city of Eureka and city of Arcata. City of Arcata was interested in incorporating those funds into their program. But beyond that, they're also interested in helping us grow our capacity and work with us so we can put some of these programs in place and things that I'm thinking about, like first-time home buyer programs and other programs that might be well-suited for the city. They've committed to work with us and help us develop that capacity as they develop their own programs. So they would add this $108,000 to the $176,000 that they're also being allocated for the 2019. So we just wanted to allocate this 1 year and not the entirety of the city's 5-year amount until we can get up to a point where we can start administering some of these programs for the benefits of the city of Fortuna. So There's a pretty short timeline. Arcata, if this is approved, it'll go to their council on Wednesday night, and then they'll submit an application before the November 30th deadline for eligible housing-related projects. And, you know, it's my opinion that more housing projects in Humboldt County ultimately will benefit the county rather than reverting back to the state and going somewhere else probably besides Humboldt County. We've had good success with delegating funds to Arcata in the past. When we had the CDBG Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security, the city allocated a portion of their funds to the Arcata House, and they did offer to provide help and assistance as requested by the city of Fortuna. I know that our police did reach out to them for assistance and help at one point. So if the subgrant of funds is approved to the city of Arcata, the city of Arcata would receive Fortuna's full 2019 allocation. There's really no direct fiscal impact with this action other than the grant funds would be transferred from Fortuna to the city of Arcata and remain in Humboldt County instead of reverting to the statewide pool. And so attached to the staff report is the adopting resolution, which is required, and also the subcontract agreement, which really has all the provisions that Arcata will comply with, demonstrating their requirements to comply with all the PALHA guidelines. So those are both attached to the staff report. So the requested motion would be to approve the contract agreement, read by title only, to subgrant the city of Fortuna's 2019 PLHA allocation to Arcata and administer on behalf of Fortuna for housing-related projects. So,
Thank you, Merritt. Any questions for Merritt?
Just for our benefit, make sure this is on. So we'll send this up to Arcata, and money stays in the county, and the county as a whole will get a benefit out of it. It's in the city of Arcata, but it stays here. Later on, we'll get our allocations from 20 and on, so 4 more allocations. And at the same time, we'll be able to take advantage of their expertise in setting up programs and getting things going for Fortuna.
that's right. And we've modeled some programs, like when Arcata, you know, another example is when they put together a program for the coronavirus loan program that came out in short order to help businesses before all those other programs came out. We were able to take their template and then apply it within the city of Fortuna. So, you know, they have a much larger planning staff than we do, and, you know, they're able to put some of these programs together, and then we can use that as a template for programs within the city. And we're not at a point with our staffing to be able to administer some of these housing programs that Arcata and Eureka are able to undertake.
Sounds like a win for everybody.
Yeah, but we would in the future. You know, we didn't want to allocate the full 5-year amount because we'd like to be able to bring some of these funds specifically for use in Fortuna in the future.
That was my question, is that what's the likelihood of future keeping those monies here and developing our own programs with Arcata's help?
I think it's good. And I think, you know, again, we want to figure out the kind of programs that we most need, and that'll be something that we'll look at going forward, and you know, we'll look around at different programs that other cities have put together, and we'll bring that back next year when we have another allocation that has to be spent, the 2020 piece.
My understanding about these SP2 dollars, I just came back from a conference that talked about this specifically, and there's been a lot of jurisdictions that didn't take advantage of these monies, and they've gone back to the state to where there's this glut of money available. And so there's proposed legislation going on to do a cleanup bill on SB2 that's going to make it allowable to seek larger grants for smaller jurisdictions, which might be the launch money that we need to develop a program.
Right. And, you know, to think about putting a program in place for $100,000, it's a huge amount of staff time for $100,000. And so, you know, our hope is if we can, you know, come up with a program that is needed, easy to implement, and then I think we really want to make sure that we don't have some ongoing monitoring with some type of program that, you know, we can complete whatever the activity is in 1 year, because that's what, when you get into that long-term monitoring and the expenditure reports, you know, for a small amount of money, it's a lot of work. And, you know, I think that's why it makes sense and at this point to send this Arcata's way. And, you know, we'll look at the application that they submit, and, you know, I know if there's an opportunity to allow Fortuna to work under the program in Arcata, that Arcata staff would probably be open to that too. So there still may be some opportunities for Fortuna to get some advantage from Arcata implementing this program. I'm not sure yet, and I can't guarantee that, but at least they'll be making use of it at a minimum in Humboldt County.
Yeah, I'd just like you to keep an eye on it so that if that SB2 cleanup bill comes through and there's larger dollar amounts other than $108,000,
Yeah.
because I think you'd spend your entire budget on staffing for monitoring and you wouldn't have any actual impact on home ownership. So, but if there was monies that could be seed money for a future program, I'd sure like to make sure we don't miss that boat.
Yeah, and absolutely, it'd be nice if we could accumulate the funds and use more of those funds in 1 year instead of having to use them every 2 years.
Quite a few years ago, Fortuna did have a first-time buyers program. So it would be nice to bring something like that.
Yeah, I think that's one that would be really, popular, especially with housing prices today. If we can have people that qualify for assistance for first-time home buyers, I think it would be a popular and a good program for the city. So that's one that we will be looking at.
Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment.
I make a motion, we approve the contract agreement adopting Resolution 2022-31, read by title only, and consent to the sub-grant of the City of Fortuna's 2019 PLHA allocation of $108,619 to Arcata to administer on behalf of Fortuna for housing-related projects. Roll call vote.
Don't we need a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Buffy?
Resolution 2022-31, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna approving the contract agreement sub-grant of the City of Fortuna's 2019 allocation of the permanent local housing allocation funds to the City of Arcata. Councilmember Johnson?
Yes.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent?
Yes.
Mayor Long?
Yes. Thank you, Buffy. Moving on to our next item is a discussion on the Roner Community Recreation and Park District presentation by the Director of Parks and Recreation, Cameron.
Perfect. Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. I thought it was important to kind of give not only City Council, but the public a recap and a summary of what's been accomplished thus far with the Roner Community Recreation and Park District, which is a local California special district, which is their city limit, or their limits encompass the city of Fortuna. And so they're getting closer to a point where they're going to be seeking funding, not only from the public, but perhaps some type of loan in order to construct the pool, and then a potential benefit assessment to request the taxpayers or parcel owners to help pay for the operation and maintenance of the pool. So this is really important for City Council to kind of be on the same page and provide support if they see that a community pool is something that is important to Fortuna. So let me go ahead and start this slideshow. So just a little bit of a general background. The Roner Community Recreation and Park District was formed in 1968. Their main mission's always been to see a pool built in the city limits of Fortuna. They had a little bit of a hiatus in the 90s where they kind of went away, but then the city was delegated their funding to use for various parks projects. They did reform in 2018. They, again, are considered a California special district. And the city basically serves as support staff to them. So we basically help them with this vision and try to move the process along for them, since they are a smaller board. They actually utilize this space for their monthly meetings, which are at 2:30 on the first Wednesday of every month. So I encourage the public to come to those meetings. And a lot of this information in this, it can be found in my monthly staff reports. I'm pretty good about putting in Roner Rec District updates in my monthly staff report, so you should see those every month. But going back to the general background, again, main mission, build an aquatic facility in the city of Fortuna. Unfortunately, the Roner Rec District does not generate generate a whole lot of money every year annually. They get less than 1% of property taxes of all the parcels within their boundary. Again, their boundary is much larger than the city of Fortuna. It encompasses about 30 square miles. There's about 5,700 parcels and about 19,000 people, whereas the city of Fortuna is a little over 12,000 people. And so again, they're generating roughly $17,000 a year, which is not a whole lot if you want to operate and maintain a swimming pool. To date, they have established a 30-year lease with the Eel River Valley Community Foundation, formerly McLean Foundation. So there is a site already delegated through them with infrastructure that was put in place to hopefully support a future pool. And, you know, the tough part is, you know, we live in a county that's surrounded by bodies of water everywhere, and learning to swim is obviously very important. But there's only one community pool located in the entire county. It's in Arcata, and that's 30 miles away. So where we are to date, so back in 2019, we completed a feasibility study. We did public outreach to really kind of discover what were the amenities, what does the public want to see in this aquatic facility, so what type of pool and what type of features it should have. And at that time, the consultant, Councilman Hunsaker, gave us a couple costs to construct. It kind of gave us a pared down version of the pool, as well as a little bit larger scale version, which, as you can see in these two conceptual designs, one on the left is the smaller 6-lane pool at $7.9 million. Again, this was 2018, so prices have inflated since then. And the one that you see on the right, which obviously has some more pool amenities and has 8 lanes, is 11.9, or was 11.9. And it also, that feasibility study allowed us to kind of give us an idea of what we would expect in revenue and expenses to operate that pool and the annual, what we call O&M. After that, we had an annexation and revenue generation analysis completed by Lako and Associates in 2020, and some of the findings from that analysis for generating that revenue so that we could operate the pool. The annexation wasn't really the best route to take. That is a 2-year process. It costs quite a bit of money and really involves getting other agencies outside of the Roanoke Rec District's boundaries to really be involved and support this type of project. So the best option was to go for a benefit assessment, and that is a special property tax for all those 5,700 plus parcels in their boundary, with the goal through surveys that we did at those public outreach meetings to keep their annual parcel tax as far under the $100 a year as possible. Basically, a benefit assessment is a mail-in ballot, and whatever ballots are received and mailed back, anything over 50% for in support, it passes. So we kind of felt like that would be the ideal route in order to help pay at least for the operation and maintenance, which then leaves the construction costs, which are pretty expensive. So next steps are to complete an engineer's report with the calculations for the annual cost or tax per parcel for that operation and maintenance. And we kind of had to pare down the facilities. Obviously, the larger the facility, the more the operation and maintenance. So we kind of diminished some of the features at the pool to kind of bring it down to a $6.5 million cost to make it a little bit more palatable to afford not only the construction but the operation and maintenance. So that left us with about $650,000 a year of operation and maintenance. I'll show you a couple different pool options that we've been discussing, and that number does vary slightly with a 40% cost recovery. So recovering 40% of the expenses as far as revenue goes. So next step again would be for the Roanoke Rec District to adopt a resolution with intent to levy an assessment and finalize the ideal pool option that meets the community needs, whether that be an indoor pool, an outdoor pool, or a hybrid of both. And I'll show you a couple images of what that might look like. And the Roanoke Rec District has recently hired a financial consultant through MCM Investments to review updated expense and revenue projections, since those costs have changed since 2019 and assist with financing options to construct the facility, so essentially, or possibly a loan. And to identify an entity that can hire and manage staff, so would cost the city a lot of money if the city were to elect to manage this future facility, as far as personnel costs and human resources costs. That can be quite exorbitant, so we were looking for another entity to potentially help manage that, and we have at least one entity who might be interested in doing that outside of the city and the Rona Rec District. And then, of course, the final step would be to, really utilize more public outreach to try to gain support for that benefit assessment finally passing. And just to kind of show you a couple updated concepts, I don't know why my little picture on the left didn't show up, but, basically a 6-lane pool doesn't have a lot of the other larger features, just locker rooms, a front entry lobby, and just basically a bare bones pool. This one would have what's called an open air roof style. So again, this is an indoor pool. You can see the footprint on the right where it would exist over on the McLean campus. And I'll just go back. That first image here is an open air pool. So basically a retractable roof that allows fresh air and sunlight to come in. So you kind of get that feel of an outdoor pool, yet you can still operate it year round, even in inclement weather. And then to note the operation and maintenance for this pool would be about $643,000 a year. And this project is about a $6.7 million project, where this project's a little bit cheaper, $6.5 million. But because there's two pools, it would be $739,000 a year roughly for the operation and maintenance. So on the left, kind of a concept of what an outdoor pool would look like. And then to the right, a concept, that's a photo. To the right, the concept of a 6-lane pool with a separate, and that 6-lane pool would be outdoor, whereas the other pool would be more of a therapy pool, shallow, warmer pool, so that you can run swim lessons, water aerobics, that kind of thing, and still have an indoor space for some of those groups that might need the warmth and the comfort of an indoor space. So this is where the Rona Rec District is at as far as determining which of these would be the best fit. So we haven't quite determined that yet. Merritt, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Just a few comments. I wanted Cameron to give an update of where this project is, because there's going to be a lot of decisions made in the very near future. And again, going out for a parcel tax is, there's a pretty high profile to that, and the community's going to, probably feel strongly about it in, one way or another. And so I just really wanted the council to be aware of this effort. I think the Rona Rec District is really going about this in a sound way by hiring a financial consultant who's familiar. They're also working with Laco and Associates. They're doing the engineering report and putting together that benefit assessment study to apply the different benefit to the parcels and come up with what the value of that parcel tax is. And so, and we're also talking with the McLean Foundation and Eel River Valley Community Center Foundation. They may have the ability to contribute to this project. In the past, they said, they don't want to support it and build it and maintain it. But at this point, they're starting to show some more interest of wanting to contribute a significant amount of money to this pool effort. So we're excited about that. So there's a lot of moving pieces. And just so the council and the public knows, the council appoints 3 out of 5 members to this board. And as Cameron said, it was languishing at one point and was threatened to be wiped out by LAFCO. But we were able to, get a number of active members interested in the pursuit of a pool back onto this board and have it be a viable board in a special rec district. So this is the point where the rec district, we're getting very close within the next year of where this recreation district will either create this pool and have the public pay for it, or we'll probably have to take the steps to recommend that the rec district not continue because it can't fulfill its mission. So this is going to be the chance for the community to say whether or not they want to pay for a pool. There's going to be a very public, very high profile public outreach campaign. And so this is all coming, and I just wanted the council to be aware of it and to understand what's happening, and for the public to hear at a city council meeting that the rec district is getting close to the point of, putting, pen to paper, saying how much it's going to cost, say what the pool will be. So at their next meeting, they'll be adopting a resolution of intent to do a benefit assessment. They'll be finalizing their selection of the preferred pool option and cost, which will also translate to how much the assessment is. So it's a very big time, and it's taken a few years to get to this point, and they're just about there. So with that, I'll hand it back to the council if there are any other questions for Cameron or I.
Well, I don't know that this is for you guys. I just think that one of the pitfalls of this is if we pass an assessment to cover the costs as they are today, those costs are only going to increase, and then you've got to change your assessment. And if this public didn't vote to increase the assessment, what happens to the pool? I mean, it could just go all kinds of crazy and end up being shut down like it has happened in other cities.
One of the
So-
things, the intention of the district of bringing on a financial consultant, we have somebody I think who's really good, and he's going through those, and so he will project an escalation on the operation costs. We have to assume that those are gonna go up and that there's gonna be, a continuous increase in those, and so it's gonna be really important to plan and account for those as we go forward, and so that's something that the district will be taking on.
And aren't, so the bulk of the cost, initial cost of, building this, you're looking for grants to do that, correct?
We have pursued grants in the past. Actually, we were talking earlier about that statewide park program grant. And so the Rona Rec District is also able to apply for those various Prop 68 grants. And they also applied for the statewide park program for the construction of the pool, and they were not successful with that grant. But of course, like the city, they'll continue to pursue grants to pay for the construction, because if there is some kind of loan cost affiliated with that, then obviously there's going to be some kind of rate. So we will continue to find grant funding where we can.
Yeah, and right now, they're not counting on getting a grant. They're counting on funding the pool from the benefit assessment, the parcel tax for benefit assessment.
For all
So
them.
there is no grant other than, potentially a contribution from McLean, a sustained contribution.
Right, but operations and maintenance would be for the assessment district.
It'd be for construction,
Oh, it would
and
be.
it would be for the ongoing operation and maintenance.
Okay.
There's no other funding source right now besides a benefited assessment, and also potentially a contribution from private grants. But right now, what the anticipation is that the district would take, would get a loan to build the pool. And then with the benefit assessment funds that come in, they would pay back they'd pay back the loan on the pool, and that it would also cover the operation and maintenance costs. But there also, users would pay fees, so it's not gonna be, so there's a projection of what the user fees would be, and then how much would be generated from the benefit assessment.
Okay.
And I apologize if I miscommunicated that and caused confusion, but yes, the benefit assessment would help pay for the construction as well.
Well,
And
there
then
are,
a loan for the rest of it.
so the benefit assessment would pay back the loan to construct the pool. There are no other funds. We're not counting, the district right now is not counting on grant funds.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, then you're going to go for, or the district will go for a grant, for a loan, and then through the benefited or the benefit assessment, that will pay back the loan. And that'll be enough to pay back the loan plus pay for operations and maintenance.
We hope so.
That's
the
well,
goal.
That's what they'll figure out. It's not a we hope. We will know what those costs are. We'll have a projection of those costs. And it really, the assessment has to be enough to pay for both of those things, or the district can't proceed.
What, on how will you make the decision on what type of pool or what you want? Who will make that decision?
There's a lot of minor details that could get finalized during the planning phase, but the important thing is to just focus on the amount. So we're trying to really focus around that $6.5 million or less, and keeping your operation and maintenance below the $650,000. So those are really the main determining factors. And later, I think it's important for us soon to kind of identify which style of pool that we would like to go for. But the costs for those associated pools is the most important really thing to focus on, and we can kind of iron out some of those details if the benefit assessment passes. But it's good to at least let the public know, this is what the pool could look like, this is what you potentially would be paying for.
And the Rona Rec District Board will make that decision. They're talking about potentially making it the next meeting, and what they're trying to do is balance the community need with the pool costs, and it's tough because the community need will change in the future, right? The city will grow, there'll be more of a demand for recreational things and potentially more demand for competitive swimming. So, you know, they're trying to go as far as they can and keep the budget palatable to the homeowners and property owners who would be paying that assessment. So, and that's a discussion topic at their next meeting.
Just a suggestion, we have a large senior community in Fortuna, and the senior community wants a therapy pool.
Absolutely.
You know, and so if it's just a regular cold swimming pool, I doubt that you'll get their vote for anything, but if you have a pool that they can use,
Right.
they'd be more willing to do it.
Those are some of the things, yeah, you have to factor is if we did end up going with just a 6-lane pool, you know, perhaps making it graded so that there was a shallower area and bumping up the temperature just a little bit slightly to meet the needs of our senior community. But ideally, it would be nice to have a separate pool, but that separate pool does cost extra as far as the operation maintenance goes. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that we need to weigh to try to find that right balance. But certainly the senior population here in Fortuna has been the most outspoken. So they really want to see this happen, especially after losing the EPT pool. That was really the only therapy pool that they had in the area. So they've definitely spoke up.
And some of the additional need, just, I know that council probably knows, but going back in time, in the past, there was a pool available at Scotia. And then there was also a pool available at College of the Redwoods. And so I think it's good this district has been around. You know, obviously the Eel River Valley needs a pool that's closer than Arcata and available to the public. So, you know, it's an interesting time for this to come up, you know, especially with those closures. But, you know, the community really has to decide whether or not they want to pay for it. And that's the question that property owners will be looking at in the very near future. And so from staff, acting as staff for the district, you know, the city's been, you know, we've been supporting the district by my time, Cameron's time, our parks director time, our finance director time. And so we can't continue to do that indefinitely. And so it's important that we get to a decision point here in the future, whether it's yes, the community wants to pay for a pool or no, they don't. And so that from the city staff perspective, we want to get it to that point, let the community decide, and then the district will either have enough funding to go forward on their own and consider their different staffing options. Right now, we're not looking at an option where the city would act as staff. I think the cost would be too high. You know, any employees of the pool would have to be PERS employees, and so the cost would be higher than, you know, the district or potentially contracting out with another third party. So, and we have some ideas for that, but a lot of this will be discussed at the Roner Community Recreation District, and I'll announce when that meeting date is in a moment when we get to the city manager's report. Or Cameron, do you know off the top of your head when that is?
Yeah, it's the first Wednesday, so whatever that is in November.
So that will be November 2nd at 2:30 p.m. So it's important that folks get in now and let the rec district know, because they are the ones making the decision. And it's a good time to check in with the Roner Rec District if you want to provide input.
You know, unfortunately, we're at a point in time right now that it's a catch-22 because with inflation, the cost of everything increasing, people are going to be reluctant to increase their tax burden. At the same time, the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets, the smaller the pool gets, to the point where it might dissolve completely. So, and I don't know, I'm not saying I know the answer. I don't know that anybody does.
Right.
But it is that kind of a situation.
Another drawback too is rates on commercial loans and private loans they've gone up significantly too. So, you know, how we got to this point 2 years ago, we might have seen the lowest interest rates for a loan, but now we're probably going to see some of the highest in a long period of time. So there's definitely some things working against us time-wise. But, you know, as we've done in the past, we've been able to reissue bonds at a lower rate when those have come down. But I think it's important for the district to, you know, make this push and make this effort and get that either approval or not from the community.
One other thing, there have been public meetings on the pool. I remember going to them. And if you want people to buy in and vote for the assessment, when you make your choices on stuff, you probably want to have a public meeting to take their opinion into.
Absolutely. That will totally be part of the process once we get to that point. So we're still just determining what that cost would be per parcel. So we want to make sure we're getting that as low as possible. And then, yeah, hitting the marketing pretty hard and trying to gain support before the benefit assessment goes out.
When
the
you're
ballot.
talking about a parcel tax, is a parcel, a 6,000 square foot parcel going to be taxed the same as a 20-acre parcel? Or-
No, there's calculations for each of the different types of parcel. Merritt, you might know a little bit more
Yeah,
detail
so
on this,
the
but it's
engine-
not the same for every parcel. It would differ.
A benefit assessment district, they have to calculate what the benefit is to each type of parcel, and they have to have a, essentially, logic and a formula of how they apply. So multifamily housing would be different than single-family housing, would be different from undeveloped commercial property, which would be different than timberland. So they go through and a process and they evaluate how each one of those parcels would benefit, and they have to apportion the cost for the amenity consistent with what that benefit would be. And so that's why they require an engineer's report for that process. And so that's really where that, again, apportionment of cost goes to each type of parcel. And then they have a database with all the parcels and which type, and so it ends up being a calculation. We'll feed in how much the expected revenues are, how much the costs are for the pool, and then it'll be spread out, and we'll be able to figure out exactly how those costs are attributed to each parcel of each different type and size.
So the parcel tax is not based on the size of the parcel. It's based on how it's zoned. So
Well, combination. Yeah.
So will everybody know exactly what their parcel tax will be before they vote on it?
yes.
And then when they vote, it's not a straight yes or no per parcel. It's the vote is proportionate to the value of the property that the owner owns. So, if somebody has a house or property that's valued at 200,000 versus somebody who has one that's at 100,000, they vote proportional to the value of their property.
Very confusing.
There's an annexation, there's a revenue generation report that the district did that explains the different mechanisms. So if we got something slightly off, or people want to look at that, they can go through and look at the different revenue generation mechanisms the district considered. And there's more of a thorough description on assessment benefit districts and how they work in there.
So then would they also consider the cost to use the pool? The people that are already paying a couple $100s a year for the pool, would their price be less than people that come from out of the area and aren't paying anything for the pool?
Yes. There's different rates for in-district versus if you live within the district and pay that and don't.
It's like
There has
a
to be.
resident and a non-resident fee. So a non-resident fee could be a little more than the resident fee.
Thanks for the update.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything else?
Yeah, quick question on the timing. You said this is going to come to a head fairly quickly. Are we talking by December?
I think the district would hope to do the resolution of intent in November. I think there's a good chance they'll select what type of pool they want, but when that costs are distributed to the district and that benefit assessment is calculated, my guess is it might be a little bit iterative. They might see what those costs are and they might come back and want to modify the pool. I doubt they'll get it right the first time, but I'd say somewhere around the beginning of the year, but I don't think by the end of the year. I
And
think
so-
they'll be ready to go. And again, I think a lot of public outreach. The community really needs to know, what they're weighing and a lot of the decision points. And so since the initial, public meetings, there really hasn't been a point where they could give people, the community, concrete numbers of what it would cost. And so it's really important that they kind of bring that back to the district before they do the assessment vote. So that's going to take some time too. So that information should be available early in the year is my guess, but I'm not sure how long it'll take for the public outreach at this point.
And then so the vote would be 2024 then?
I think 2023.
2023?
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you, Cameron. So watch for those dates. The next one for that group is November 2nd at 2:30, but also watch for the public meetings. They'll be advertised. We'll get information out to the community so people can participate.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
all
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Moving on to city manager's report. Well, we're really just getting an update. Go ahead. You got a couple minutes. We don't have any answers for you. You need to go to the actual Roner Park, Roner Community Recreation Park.
The meeting of the location, November 2nd.
Right here.
2:30 right here.
Right here, yeah.
I tell people.
Okay.
Somebody asked me about the pools.
Two main points I had. This is Charles Wilson. One is we've had lots of swimming pools in Humboldt County in the past, or at least lots of them, for a small town like, a small county like this. I remember we had you got the Arcata pool now. The Humboldt State pool, they destroyed, and they put a 16 million or something like that 15, 20 years ago to build a baby pool, I call it, another pool with a 25 yard or so limit there. Then we had the Arcata High School pool. I think Arkley gave it to them for free. Okay, I don't know if that's true or not, but I don't read all the newspapers all the time. But anyway, okay, so that was I got the impression that was a 50-meter pool. Okay, that's gone now. We got a basketball court, same as with the Humboldt State. Then we got the College of Redwoods pool. That's gone. I went to it 25 years or so ago. It's gone. So anyway, they got the Calcourt pool. That's gone. I swim once a week. Okay, I put try to get my mile in and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of these pools aren't necessarily going to survive. The other thing is benefit. Timberland has zero benefit from a swimming pool. An apartment house has a lot of benefit from a swimming pool. So the benefit analysis should give the apartment houses and the people that have the properties that have larger numbers of people, a greater burden of the benefit and have to pay more for the thing. Commercial businesses, they don't have any people living in them. They don't use the pool. So from a benefit standpoint, now the state had a benefit parcel tax, had no relationship to benefit, for the fire. So the thing is, I did these things for 40 years. But anyway, the thing is, you should stick to benefit. Who benefits from the use of the pool, and they should pay accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, and now it's part of the discussion that is in the future. All right, city manager's report.
Okay, I'll be brief on this report. I'd just like to review the upcoming meeting dates. November 7th, we have a regular city council meeting at 6:00 p.m. But before that, we just have a check-in with our community development department to just talk about the planning priorities and have the council review those. That'll start at 4:00 before the next meeting on November 7th. On November 21st will be the next council meeting after that. The next planning commission meeting will be on October 25th at 6:00 p.m. The next Measure E committee meeting is December 20th at 5:30 p.m. And the next Roner Community Recreation Park District meeting will be November 2nd, Wednesday, November 2nd at 2:30 p.m. here in council chambers. So just a few items. I've continued to meet with a number, to follow up on the PG&E and their inability to provide power. We've had a number of developers, both in escrow or approved projects, who have been very concerned. So I spent a lot of time meeting with those developers and trying to explain the status of where we're at, when we're going to have more information so they can better plan for their projects. The next, I've also met with Supervisor Bone and Darcy Hook, who's a CPUC commissioner, on Sunday, and she came to visit Humboldt County and try to understand the power-related issues. And then on October 24th, that's when we expect to work with McGuire and reconvene a meeting of PG&E, Rio Dell, county supervisors to receive an update and hear from PG&E more specifically what their limitations are, what they can serve, what they can't, what their timeline is for fixing it. So they've been tasked and have agreed to a framework with Senator McGuire to do those things and bring it back to us on the 24th. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed and continue to follow up and let this process through McGuire's office play out, and then we'll consider our options depending on what we hear on the 24th. And then interestingly, I received an email from CPUC staff, and they're working on initiating, public meetings to consider what is happening with the grid and how best to plan for our energy future to allow things like charging stations and converting houses from gas to electric, and how to optimize the grid. And this group was unaware of the power limitations in Humboldt County. So that was my first point, was to bring it to them and explain that, well, we already have limitations and we're not able to hook up batteries and some charging stations at this point. So we've got the right hand talking to the left. I was really, again, pleased that Darcy Hook came, and she's aware and participating in that process. So now we have some of the government liaison folks and also the grid planning folks all kind of aware of the issue and working on it, so that's good. We opened bids on the Rona Park basketball court project, which is a Measure E funded project to improve the basketball courts. Unfortunately, the bids came back higher than we expected, and so we're reconfiguring some of the amenities, the patio area, some of the benches, the tree well, some of the things that added quite a bit of cost but didn't produce a better basketball court. And so we're kind of simplifying those. Our public works director is really trying to figure out how to economize a little bit more without sacrificing the quality of a basketball court. So I think we're going to get we plan to go back out to bid for that with some revised plans, probably within a couple of weeks. So we want to get that out and still proceed with that project. And we're very optimistic of being able to deliver, a great basketball court project and very close to what the budgeted amount is. And then I've just been pursuing some advocacy for improvement of the city's interchanges at 12th and Kenmar, and then also some of the economic development projects that that city staff have been advocating for, both on the mill site and other areas within the city. So I have meetings set up with Jared Huffman's staff on November 3rd, and then McGuire's staff on November 8th, and really just trying to put continued pressure on our electeds to help support the natural growth of the city through the improvement of those interchanges and any help that we can get with the development of the mill site. So it's really important that we stay on top of that and really, kind of be in the forefront of both our electeds' minds, both county level, state level, talking to Caltrans executive committee, and really kind of convey the need for the improvement of those interchanges for the well-being of the city. So it's going to be an ongoing effort to really continue, on my part to do that. And we have a couple of meetings set up in early November.
The November 7th meeting, what was the time for the community development?
4 o'clock. Yeah, so it'll be just preceding the council meeting. That's all I have.
All right, thanks. Good report. Future agenda items that we haven't discussed in the past. Anything? All right, moving on to council reports. Mike Johnson.
First off, did not have any policy committee meetings yet. Waiting for the appointments to come through. And do have a HCOG meeting this coming Thursday. A couple of interesting things. One, the Eureka Arcata Corridor Project update, and a update on North Coast Offshore Wind Community Benefit Network. So I'm not sure yet what that is, but I mean, look, if it's going to happen, what will be the benefit? Rest of it's consent calendar items, and the biggest one being the HTA LTF allocation. And that's all I have at this time.
All right, thanks. Mike Losey.
I have a Redwood Coast Energy Authority meeting 2 weeks from now. And since our last meeting, haven't had any other meetings. So I'm keeping it short.
All right, Jeremy.
I haven't had any other meetings since our last visit. Our Parks and Rec Committee meeting was postponed or canceled for lack of a quorum. But, I do see all the work that the Parks and Rec Department's doing in our parks through the consent agenda. I do have to say, I know they do a lot more than 20 bullet points, but there was 20 bullet points of items that they did in the last month, and 6 of them were regarding vandalism and graffiti. And so that's really a frustration that I would like to see if citizens can help us and help the Parks and Rec Department and the police department to curb some of that vandalism and graffiti. And it's just distasteful and disrespect to our town. And I just want to do whatever we can to curb that and see that go away. Other than that, we still are flying the position for FBID part-time coordinator, and we're still seeking FBID, what do you want to call it, advisory committee members. Is that?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. So the period closed on the applications, and I was really pleased. We have 4 applicants that, may be well qualified for the position. So we do have some interest, and that did close, but we are still desperately needing FBID board members for the advisory committee. So if anybody's interested in being on the advisory committee for the FBID board, we're still accepting applications for that until filled.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Jeremy. Tammy?
Okay, in reference to your committee, I am actually the president of the Cal Cities Redwood Empire Division for next year. So I will be making all the appointments to all the policy committees, and you will get reappointed. So I have been working with our rep in Sacramento on all of this, and we'll also be hosting one of the league's meetings next year too. So that'll be something that's exciting for us here. And we're getting all those dates all set up, and so that's all I have to report.
All right, thanks, Tammy. REDAC meeting next Monday night. PG&E is going to be making a presentation to the Board of Supervisors on November 1st. I think several of us are going to try to attend that meeting. There is a Fortuna Chamber Mixer this Wednesday at Coast Central Credit Union at 5:30. Our numbers have been kind of down. It would be nice to see some people get out and support our business community. The Kiwanis Women's Business Luncheon is Thursday. It's one of my favorite events that was kind of put off because of COVID. And we have, they do 2 awards, a Businesswoman of the Year and a Woman of Distinction of the Year. And it's not a secret. And I think that their choices were excellent. The Businesswoman of the Year is Kim Brown from Cornerstone Realty. And the Woman of Distinction is Tina Taylor, who does a ton of stuff for the city very quietly behind the scenes. So congratulations to those 2, and I hope we'll see a lot of you at the luncheon. We're also planning an event. We have the cross-country state finals, Northwest?
No, it's the Eastern Regional Championships for junior college.
There we go.
Yeah, the community college. I thought it was North State Community College.
Well, anyway,
California.
about 800.
It's big championships in the park. Yeah.
Championship, they're going to run the course in our Roner Park. They have about 800 athletes signed up, and so all of those athletes, as well as their families and friends, will be coming to our area. So Chamber and myself and a few other people are trying to plan an event for that day. So we're still working on details and trying to get some information about Fortuna into the hotel rooms and just doing what we can kind of on a short notice to get people out and about, and the coaches from CR had some great ideas that they're trying to pull off. So look forward to that on November 4th, which is Friday night, and November 5th, maybe come out and support. Just, come down to the park and see what's going on. And with that, we have a closed session tonight. Public Employee Performance Evaluation pursuant to Section 54957 of the Government Code, Title City Manager. So we need a motion to adjourn to closed session.
Motion to adjourn to closed session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn to closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. See you all next time. Thanks.